Okay, let's try again with a board context, which I think will make the black pieces a bit brighter here and easier to follow the game. So Van Beely was white. He kicked off with d4. I'll repeat some of the commentary and perhaps add some bits which I now understand a bit more from this game. So d5, knight c3, and after knight bd7, Van Beely took on d5, so fixing black's pawn structure a lot more. And after c6, white has a later plan often of rook b1 and then b4, b5 to try and dent black's pawn structure a bit more, to leave black often with an isolated a pawn as well as a c pawn on this on this semi-open c file, and often c5 is also useful for white. So Nigel is keen to slow down this minority attack, and he does so after castling bishop d3, rook e8. He's soon going to be playing a5 to try and slow down the attack. So h3 is an interesting move as well. The bishop is prepared to be tucked on h2 rather than routinely taking on f6. So the bishop's trading for the dark square bishops are going to have a trade there later on when the bishop gets tucked on h2. So now we see this trade, and black's playing on the semi-open file, and he's going to double up rooks, to put more pressure on e4 soon. White in return will be trying to parry all the threats on the king side, and at the same time play for his plan on c5 to get a knight to c5. So b4, the minority attack is in full swing now. So knight comes to e4. Now c5 is useful for white to use. By the way, one point I noted here, queen f6, there's knight takes d5, so maybe that's why Nigel wanted to take on c3. So there's continual threats for a while now. Bishop takes h3 as a threat. So white first takes on g6. Now bishop h3 is again a threat. So against that, king f1 to unpin the g2 pawn. So f6 was played. Now rook a1. So not sort of rook b1 to sort of play rook b8 or b7, but instead to try and get both rooks as rapidly as possible to the 7th rank. So queen h5 threatening bishop takes h3 again, because then queen takes f3 if g takes. So knight e1, and also the knight begins its journey to c5. Here there's a threat of rook takes e3, so white has to do something again against rook takes e3, so he moves his king again. And again there's a threat now, bishop takes h3, and this time white avoids repetition. Instead of going to f1, he goes to h2. So he really wants to build his positional advantage on the queen side without this distraction, all these dynamic threats that Nigel was generating on the king side. So queen f5, attacking f2, but now the knight can come to d3, achieving not just positional aim but also protecting f2. So queen e6, I'm not sure there's a direct threat here, but there's a nasty possibility sometimes of queen d6, so maybe it's against this that white secured his king a bit now with king g1. So all's been sort of made a bit safer on the king side, and the knight's in an ideal spot now to come to c5. But first the rooks are also going to double on the 7th rank. So there's multiple positional factors here giving white an advantage, a big positional advantage, which is soon going to be converted into a material advantage. So queen c8, and the queen's also instructive how it's like working with both rooks to make sure that that pressure on the 7th rank is maintained. So rook a8 stops giving black any counterplay and any checks here, and rook b7 gives the possibility of queen a7 and maybe other threats if black isn't careful, like knight e6 as well, because queen takes, there's queen takes d8, so there's horrible threats to deal with already here. So bishop f7 may be guarded against knight e6, but then queen a7, and now there's a direct threat of rook takes f7, and the bishop can't move because rook takes g7. Now this rook f8 unfortunately is not really that good because of knight d7, and I wonder if you can spot the next move if I give you 5 seconds. starting from now. Okay, knight takes f6. So he's getting a pawn. So he's converted his positional advantage into material advantage. There's no real perpetual checks here because the king can go to h2 and black can't continue checking. So white goes in for the kill with both rook and queen now, and this queen f7 forced Nigel's resignation. So it was really amazing how white weaved the pieces, from the queen side to the king side. Shall we have a look at that again if we rewind this game? So classic minority attack with some unusual sort of decisions really, like this bishop, to get it onto h2, and not just routinely, capture on f6. I mean that's one thing, but also, the delay of white simply playing bishop, sorry, not the delay of bishop d3, evidently. No, that's classic. No, the delay here of not castling. That's what I meant. Not immediately castling here, playing h3. So already he's thinking about this bishop, and he doesn't really want to take it on f6. Instead, the bishop gets tucked on h2. So it's there's some precise decisions, and also this combining of defense and attack all the time. Defense against black's dynamic counterplay on the king side, and attacking on the queen side, positionally. Well, which turns out to be tactical threats as well later, because the pressure it gets converted into tangible pressure. Not just this backward pawn. The back pawn is only the start of the issue. It's this c5. It's white's ability to double the rooks on the 7th rank, which gives real targets towards the black king, really. So it's a positionally motivated, kingside attack, really, later on. How these rooks came to the 7th rank. So keeping at bay all these threats all the time. So rook takes e3 as a threat there. Bishop takes h3 as a threat again. Queen takes f2 was a threat, but knight d3 parries and goes in for the attack on c5. And now the rooks finally are able to come to the 7th rank. The knight, the knight is springing now to its ideal square on c5, which does actually provide concrete tactical threats now. Very soon, like of knight e6 if black's not careful. So here, after queen a8, rook a7, queen c8, black's having to defend against knight e6. So this is very tricky now. Because knight e6, even though the queen's guarding it, there will be queen takes d8. So maybe that's why bishop f7. But it's just tactic leads to tactic. The threats just build up and a sort of forcible win of material. So it's amazing how a structural concern led to actually much better pieces, for the knight and the rooks, and the queen even was involved in this 7th rank attack, culminating in black's resignation here. Hope you enjoyed it, and please leave any comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.